Alright. Hello, my name is Colton Black.
And I'm Malcolm Cole.
And I'm Greg Knight.
Today, May 14th, 2011, we are at the Cambridge Regional Library to interview Ernie Scott and the Gagetown Ferry. Our hopes are that you enjoy listening to our interview.
Okay, so Ernie, I understand that you've run the ferry for about 26 years now. How did you learn to run the ferry?
Yes, when I first started, I worked with another operator for probably 3-4 days. I learned the mechanisms at all, and then they put me on by myself. And I just picked up, and you learn yourself as you.
In 1930, LeBaron Hector was the ferry operator. He earned $883 for the year. How did this compare to your earnings?
Well, that was, we get a lot better pay now than Barry Hector got. His was private at the time, and you paid a toll to go across the ferry, and that's how he made his money. But we get paid by an hourly rate by the provincial government. My rate of pay is $17.21 an hour.
Wouldn't LeBaron Hector be proud to hear that news now?
Yes, he would. He'd be very pleased.
Yeah, I bet he would. How often is maintenance done to the ferry, and how much fuel is used?
We do our maintenance every shift. We grease the sheaves and rollers and check the oil in the motor and the generator. And any other checks, we check the cable, and we use approximately 900 liters of fuel a week on an average. We use approximately 900 liters on a week on an average, but the last time we fueled, we had 1,132 liters, which was colder weather. The motors were running longer, and the generator was running for heat. So it used up more fuel. Like the wintertime season, everything runs mostly 24 hours. In summertime, you can shut it off. Your fuel consumption goes down.
Okay, what are the dangers of the job, and what happens if the cable breaks?
Well, if the cable breaks, the ferry loses control and it'll swing around. We have to throw an anchor out. We have an anchor on the end. You let it down, that holds it there. But if we go over the telephone cable runs across, we usually wait till you get below it to put the anchor out, because we don't want to tear that out.
Do you have any interesting stories about things that have happened on the ferry?
Oh, yes. I've had the cable break on my shift and tear the anchor out of the shore. We had passengers on the ferry, but we managed to get it on in to the shore, and we got them off, and we had to tie it up. Sometimes a passenger will get a little excited or panic, so you have to keep them calm. But we've been lucky; we haven't had to do any rescues or things like that.
Have you ever had to use the lifeboats on the ferry?
I've never personally had to use it to carry anybody to shore or rescue anybody, but we take training once a month. We have to launch the boat, drive it around, and we have procedures. We have a muster place you go to, and the deckhand, he puts people at the muster. I control, I'm the operator, I control the whole procedure from the wheelhouse, but we have to test this every month and get training on it, how to get somebody out of the water into the boat, or if somebody falls overboard, or just safety, things like that. And we have to wear a life jacket and be prepared for everything according to the rules and regulations of the Transportation Department.
When do you see the most traffic crossing the ferry?
Normally it's on Saturdays and Sundays, and especially holidays.
How many vehicles would cross in a normal day?
On a normal day through the week, probably 200 to 300 vehicles, sometimes a little more. It's hard to, every day is different. And so there's an average of 2 people to a vehicle or better.
Have you seen any unusual vehicles on the ferry?
Yes, we have an antique club that usually crosses Corvettes. And there is another club that has Ford Mustangs. And we see a lot of motorbikes that are fixed up fancy. And antique cars, they'll have clubs crossing. Probably back in the year the cars are in the 40s and 50s. Sometimes a little older.
So I understand that the Gagetown Fair runs approximately the second weekend of September.
Yeah.
What would you say the traffic increases around then?
It increases quite a substantial. Our flow of cars probably would be, you're getting up around 3,000, 4,000 passengers and 2,000, 2,500 vehicles for the whole weekend when the fair is on. And that's probably average. I don't know exactly how many, but that would average out like that.
So are there any other special events or just plain regular events in general that would increase traffic?
Yes, Gagetown has a Rage in the Gauge, they call it, and last of July, 1st of August, somewhere there. And the Army area, people have an anniversary every 4 years or so, I think. And that increases people, and the marina down on Front Street increases on the weekends especially.
So could you tell us about operating the ferry in the winter months?
Yes, when you're running the winter, especially in storms and everything, will fill your track in. And when you go through it, it rolls over and makes ice. And then it gets too thick and you have to bail it out. But as long as you're running in the track, it won't freeze completely over, so you can keep it open that way. But if you happen to break down, it'll freeze over, and then you've got to have a machine to break it, or sometimes dynamite it to open it up, and then you bail the junks out.
Do you have any interesting stories you could tell us?
Yes, well, one year the ferry had broke down, and it got stuck out in the river. One of the operators had his car on there. So when he froze in, he couldn't get his car off, so it froze in solid and they had to dynamite the track. So they put plywood over top of his car. When they blew the dynamite off, chunks of ice flew up and they hit on top of his car and onto the plywood. It didn't do any damage, but the ice was all over the deck of the ferry.
So how many people work on the ferry at one time, and what are their responsibilities?
2 of us work at all times on a shift. The deckhand, he loads the cars on, he parks them, he signals them for to leave. And the operator, he lands the ferry, opens the gates, and he controls the ferry, basically.
So what are the length of the shifts that people work?
Yeah, we work 12-hour shifts at the present time, and the 2 of us together on a shift, and we worked 3 days on and 3 days off.
What were some of the ferries that were in the river in the past?
Well, when I first started, then we had a wooden ferry at Upper Gagetown. We were limited to the weight we could put on like heavy vehicles because it was wooden deck. So when it ran over, it had a chain, like a chain drive. And when we went across and we went to stop, we had to pull the back into neutral and let it coast along the cable. When we stopped at shore, we had a foot brake. You push it with your foot to get it stopped, and it run on a disc like a vehicle brake.
What kind of engine's in the ferry and how does it make it run?
We have a Detroit diesel marine motor, 6-cylinder, and that puts the power out. We have a hydraulic pump. Everything runs by hydraulic fluid on the end of the motor, and it turns that up. It puts the flow of hydraulic fluid out, what we call bull wheels, and that turns them, and that grabs itself on the cable and keeps pulling. So when the cable comes in around one bull wheel, over and around another one, back out, so it pulls each way.
How does flooding affect the ferry?
Well, when the river rises to a certain level, we have to shut the ferry down if it gets up that high that you can't go in and land and a vehicle get on it safely. And there's tie downs, what we call them tie downs on your cable, and they're buried in the landings, so we unhook them as the water rises. So when you run out of tie downs, you can't control where the ferry's land because the cable moves with the tide and wind. So we usually have to shut the ferry down at that time.
So what are tie downs and how
Well,
do they work?
tie downs are, there's a big beam. We bury it way down deep in the ground like an anchor, and there's chains run off of that up to the surface. So we put clamps on that and goes around your cable, and that holds it in position in a groove. So when the water rises, they get too tight. So you have to either lengthen them out for a while or unhook them. And once you unhook them, you don't control your landings anymore.
So what are some interesting stories you might have?
Oh, at times we have some interesting people that come on the ferry, and they usually get in a problem. Their driving skills aren't up to par, and sometimes they can't get the car to start, so we have to go out and kind of tell them where to put it in gear or in park so they can start it up, and then they drive off. And you got to be careful with what's coming on, because sometimes they come on faster than what they normally would. And you try to keep them in the middle of the ferry so they have a straight run on and off.
What are some problems you might have with the cable?
Well, at certain times when the water changes levels in the river, your cable will stretch out, or we call it stretching, gets too slack. And then sometimes when it's too slack, when you're coming in to shore, you lose grip on your bull wheels. And that just puts it out of gear, and it won't stop. And you just slide right along till you hit the shore to stop you. And you think at the time when you're up there, you're picking up speed. You think you're going faster. You're not really, but you think you are. So, and then the water will fly up and cars will jerk on the deck and things like that.
Do you have any more interesting stories?
Well, yes, when I was working in Upper Gagetown, the Army had maneuvers on, so I stayed one night and hauled their vehicles 2 at a time. They're usually the tracked vehicles or with their big guns. We did it all in the dark. And they had a barge running back and forth on the other ramp, and I took 2 on. They'd take 2 or 3. There were some trucks. We went all night long. We had to land in the dark. They had to drive onto the ferry in the dark and depart off the ferry in the dark. But I did run my navigational lights in case there was boats in the river. But it was very interesting. We went all night long.
years ago, our New Brunswick government tried to put cutback measures in place so the ferry would no longer operate. Can you share a little about your thoughts on the continued operation of the ferry?
Yes, well, I personally myself thought it should be kept running, basically for tourism for the village of Gagetown and Jim's sake, because to me, the whole village is based on tourism. Plus, you get from Lower Cambridge, going to the doctor's office, which most of the patients are elderly, and it's a shorter drive for them. And it's good for business on both sides. And then they had the protest to keep it running, and then eventually decided they'd run it from spring to fall. In the winter of '09, they shut it down. And we had to change of government. They run it all last winter through 2010, and they're still running it on a 24-hour basis at the present time. And I think it's good to have it still running.
Have you ever had any famous people cross the ferry?
Yes, I've had several over. I think I've shook hands with 3 to 4 premiers, and we had a lieutenant governor crossed, and the base commander from Gagetown, just checking the ferry out and see if vehicles could cross at the time. That's basically it.
This concludes our interview with Ernie Scott. Thank you for the opportunity, a Legacy of History project.